Detour by Dottie Gravely, Chapter 3. Family Vacation in Alabama. Why July 4th? Each year, Central Carolina Community College, where I worked, closed its doors for 2 weeks around July 4th. Vacations had to be planned for that time. My job there at CCCC was to prepare students to take the GED test or reach ninth grade levels in math and reading to enter adult high school. Some of the students had been a little unpleasant and unruly lately. We all needed a vacation. July 4th was also good for our children's schedules. Why Sharon's house? It had lots of room. My realtor friend and former classmate from Eva High School class of 1965, Ellen, had helped Sharon and Lewis negotiate a sweet deal to purchase a beautiful home with 5 bedrooms on a shady lot. One of the bedrooms was in an upper romper room over the garage. It had a beautiful A-frame window looking out into the treetops and included a full-size pool table. The home helps pay for itself by being a favorite on the vacation rental by owner Verbo online site under Chalet in the Woods. The owners just have to be willing to work hard cleaning before and after renters and be willing to yield their home to strangers on rental weekends and find some other place to stay themselves. There seems to be a hotel and housing shortage around Auburn, so the owner rental business is attractive to groups on weekends of Auburn home games or graduation ceremonies. The idea is attractive for young homeowners to boost their income. Sharon and Lewis usually stay with friends, family, or a nearby state park. Sharon's logic won the day when she told everyone, "Let's do family vacations at my house this year instead of going in debt for a beach house. My house is free to family." So we got started planning that last family vacation that seems to keep on happening. Family in 2015 was all 4 of our children, 3 spouses, and 3 grandkids, plus grandmama and granddad, Dottie and Alan. Any other year, Charles would have been in Belgium, but he and Amanda were in the U.S. doing a year of itinerating to raise the level of their budget support as foreign missionaries to college students in Brussels. They had arrived in June but went directly to Colorado to visit Amanda's parents before attending missionary meetings at their headquarters in Springfield, Missouri, then setting up a new apartment in Lafayette, Louisiana, their base of operations. A vacation trip to Auburn from southern Louisiana with 2 little guys was doable. Aiden was thrilled and began commenting, "I'm going to John Moore's house." His brother Gabriel just seemed pleased that older brother, his hero, was happy. Allison and Daniel planned to join us for some of the 5 days we would all be together July 6th through the 10th. Daniel was now driving a semi-truck flatbed. His dispatcher could route him near Auburn, where he could leave the truck and we would pick him up. Allison would ride down with us from North Carolina. Joel planned to come stay with us right before the trip. He wanted to know if it would be all right for a friend to come along. This was a new friend, a young lady named Pratty. We had been hearing about Pratty. They met on Christian Mingle, the modern way to set up your own blind date, which doesn't have to be so blind with all the snooping techniques out there. Joel was liking what he had observed so far, and apparently Pratty was as well, because she was eager to join us and meet the entire Gravely clan when they all would be gathered together. Brave girl. Of course, we said yes, bring her on down. Pratty planned to leave her home in New Jersey early July 5th, pick up Joel in the D.C. area, then arrive at our house that evening. I made sure the house was immaculate to impress her. I had a huge meal prepared for supper, but since they arrived much later than expected, most of it went directly to my freezer to be eaten after the vacation, after the detour. Joel's affectionate name for Pratty was the Indian Princess. She had an interesting background. Her family lives in Hyderabad, India. Her full name was Pratibha Yasala. Pratty just helped Americans who struggle with her real name. She is probably a 3rd or 4th generation Christian from a Hindu land. Joel explained that she was a very smart person, a good cook, and as pretty as a princess, and lots of fun to be with and loved kids. He sounded a little bit like someone in love. Our family had had an international mindset since we had lived in married student housing at the University of Alabama with global residents, and later, in our own home, we used to rent a bedroom to international students. We all hoped time with us wouldn't hurt the relationship. What were we all going to do in Auburn, Alabama for 5 days? With all the driving to reach Auburn, no one wanted to go 2 more hours to the beach. Sharon had it all figured out. There's a state park nearby. Just down the road is a historical battlefield. Tuskegee Institute is not far away. Atlanta is only 45 minutes away with Six Flags. We could play it by ear. The first full day after arriving, we all vegged and enjoyed a neighborhood swimming pool. One day, the girls enjoyed sitting around the dining table and doing some fancy manicures with Sharon's kits. We tried on some Indian saris that Pratty had brought along. We relaxed and took a walk. The 3 grandsons all fit into the little red wagon for a walk or stroll down the road to the lake. Not one of them volunteered to get out, so their dads tugged and pushed them up the hill on the return walk. We were just thrilled that they were long-distance cousins bonding on a short vacation together. But the highlight of the week happened Wednesday, July 8th. We loaded up the cars and headed to the Georgia Aquarium in Atlanta. Lewis and Sharon had free tickets to swim in the whale shark tank with the aquarium diving team in wetsuits. There's never a dull moment with those two. Everyone enjoyed looking at all the marine life displays. At the set time, Sharon and Lewis excused themselves to go get dressed in their wetsuits. Alan and I took charge of John Moore and got in line to see the show. Through the glass walls, we could look up and see the diving team and guest swimmers enter the water with a few small regular sharks and the whale sharks. I was wondering if this was really a good idea, but a lady employee came by to reassure the family members that the divers were not in danger. She had a rope about 1 yard long with a ball mounted in the center. It was about the size of a golf ball. She explained that the rope represented the length of the whale's shark's mouth. The ball was equivalent to the size of its throat. These homely creatures, as ugly as homemade soap, fed on plankton, not people. Their splotchy snouts were flattened like a ping-pong paddle. All animals in the tank had just been fed. Soon the people in wetsuits appeared at the top of the tank, all looking the same to us. Sharon's signal to identify herself was her thumbs-up sign. John Moore waved, but I'm not sure he believed it was Mommy. I had to admire Sharon. I've read in His Needs, Her Needs by Willard Harley that one of the 5 basic needs of men is for their wives to be recreational playmates. That was the ultimate example of that in action. A videographer was also in the water capturing the whole adventure with his camera. His video was presented later to the divers as a gift. Pratty seemed to be enjoying this whole experience and was making headway in winning the heart of little 20-month-old Gabriel, Charles, and Amanda's baby. Back at Sharon's place, we relaxed some more. The final day of relaxation came Thursday, July 9th. Our grown kids were sitting around the dining table playing some complicated card game that Joel wanted to teach everyone. I volunteered to babysit Gabriel so that Amanda could enjoy the game. She had worked hard managing him at the aquarium the day before and deserved some respite. Gabriel and I found the little red wagon and decided to do some yard work for Uncle Lewis. Out front, under the tall, shady trees, we found lots of large twigs that could be collected for the woodpile, and Amanda could see from the front window that her son was in good hands. For me, it was the ultimate grandma fix. I had Gabriel all to myself. For Gabriel, it seemed it was making him feel important and useful. What a helper. But being outside in July in Alabama, even under shade tree, has its limit, so we went inside. I turned Gabriel over to his parents. Without warning, it happened. The Detour. My head suddenly experienced a thunderclap, pulsating pain that was more intense than any headache in my entire life. It seemed I was having 100 coffee headaches at one time. What was going on? I did the only thing I knew to do. I requested prayer. I said to everyone in the card game at the table, "Would y'all gather around and pray for me? My head is hurting worse than I've ever hurt, and I feel like I'm going to pass out." The game stopped instantly. I remember my children supporting prayer. Then I did indeed pass out. Charles and Lewis tried to transport me to a sofa to lie down, but I was unable to cooperate. I was making loud groans in pain while unconscious. The family did not know if I would live or die. Alan said that everyone stayed calm, therefore the grandchildren were not frightened. Sharon called 911. Firemen arrived first, then the paramedics. They concurred that I was having a stroke, and it would be useless to get me to the local Auburn hospital since it had no stroke unit. I would need to go just over the state line to Columbus, Georgia, by helicopter. Lewis checked with his neighbor, who had a huge field between his house and the street, and got permission to land a helicopter there nearby. I was loaded into it and had my one and only helicopter flight of my life, and I don't remember anything at all about it. Daniel arrived in Auburn with his truck about the time and called Allison to come pick him up. She explained what was going on and told him to wait just a bit. He saw the helicopter in the air from the Home Depot parking lot. Maybe his prayers ascended with the helicopter. Around 9 p.m., I woke up in the ER of the Columbus Hospital and saw Alan, over 6 feet of comfort in one package, my partner in tribulation. Since there were no available bed upstairs, Alan and I spent the night in the ER. He told me I had had a brain aneurysm. We learned later that it was called a subarachnoid aneurysm. Thus, I ruined my family vacation. What in the world did my prospective daughter-in-law think of this family now? She witnessed her potential future mother-in-law passing out and being carried away into the wild blue yonder. Daniel told me later that he thought the experience helped to bond her with our family. Our children extended their vacations a day or two, but had to get back to their routines. Joel and Pratty had planned to use our house as a halfway point to spend the night for some rest on the return trip to D.C. and New Jersey. Since the house now stood empty, there would be no chaperones there. Alan contacted his brother Ben in Raleigh for help. He and his wife had guest rooms and came to the rescue. Joel and Pratty's trip home was successful and restful. Isn't there a proverb about a brother being born for adversity? Ben and Martha have stepped up to the plate so often to help out in numerous lives, not just ours. I stayed in the hospital a few days, took large yellow horse pills, and began to feel better. After some tests for bleeding, I was released to go stay at Sharon's house for a while. There she noticed that I was still not recovering well and suggested that I see a doctor. She also gave me the Bible verses that will become my bedrock throughout the coming days and weeks. They were 1 Corinthians 1, 9 and 11. But we had this sentence of death in ourselves, that we should not trust in ourselves, but in God, which has raised the dead, who delivered us from so great a death, and doth deliver, in whom we trust, that he will yet deliver us. King James Version. Alan found a doctor at a neurosurgery center in Opelika, near Auburn, and got me to see him that day. When the doctor heard all the details of my case, he advised us to see the regional specialist at the University of Alabama in Birmingham, or UAB, Dr. Harrigan, to make sure there would not be an additional aneurysm. Another one could be fatal. The doctor made the calls himself to get me an ambulance, and also to get me into Dr. Harrigan's clinic. We could sense the seriousness behind the doctor's swift maneuvering. Away we went to the local hospital that had an ambulance transport service. This time, I went by land. Helicopters were not flying because of afternoon thunderstorm warnings. The young driver covered the distance between Opelika to UAB in 1 hour and 20 minutes. She said straight up, Highway 280. It would have taken the average driver well over 2 hours for the same trip. I thought to myself, another aneurysm could be fatal, but an ambulance wreck could be also. There are lots of intersections and traffic lights on Highway 280, and this place is a wet county with hundreds of young drivers. I wondered if the young paramedic in the ambulance was ready to meet his maker. At first, I didn't feel like witnessing to him, sharing my faith, but as I got to talking to him about a missionary with a name similar to his, I realized that I was feeling better and ventured asking him some probing questions about his faith. He assured me that he knew exactly where he would go at death because he had placed his faith in Christ at an early age. Good. Now I could focus on what was ahead, on whatever the specialists might say. All this, doctors, tests, pills, ambulance rides, was out of my comfort zone. I had not been an overnight patient in a hospital since my oldest child was born over 40 years earlier. Soon I heard that another test was necessary, a cerebral angiogram, to shoot dye into my brain to detect further bleeding. The scanner device entered my bloodstream through my right thigh. I don't remember any of that, but I did soon comprehend that brain surgery would be needed to put clips around veins that were bleeding. That was definitely not within my comfort zone. My surgeon quoted the statistics to Alan. Without the clips, patients face a 40% chance of recurrence of aneurysm. With clips, the odds are 10%. I wanted to live to take care of Alan, and I could not bear to think of the heartache that my early departure would cause for my children. We decided to submit to the surgeon's knife. He saves lives daily. At that point, I actually worded my own prayer request on a Facebook post on July 16th, the day before brain surgery. When I check back on that post, I see dozens of comments from friends who were praying. I needed and felt those prayers. Later, I found out that whole churches and groups were praying for me. Groups like a Raleigh Sunday school class, my brother's church in Tennessee, my home church, and a student group in Belgium. It was humbling. Their faith buoyed me up in the days of recovery. Maybe the prayers helped keep me in peace. I don't recall being afraid. In just a few days, I went from enjoying my grandson in the front yard to having stitches and staples in my head, to tolerating an IV in my left arm, to wearing diapers and a catheter. Ugh. My wardrobe changed too. Now I was in a hospital gown. After the surgery, my body was swollen as well as my face. My eyes looked out through slits in my puffy eyelids. Half my bangs and a large patch of hair on the back lower right quadrant of my head had been shaved off. That's how two of my first visitors saw me. Two of my pastors from Garner, North Carolina. What were they doing in Birmingham, Alabama? Pastor Ryan and Pastor Joe had just landed at the Birmingham airport. UAB was between the airport and their destination, a church conference for pastors at Church of the Highlands, a little further up Highway 280. They had been communicating with Alan by phone. It was an honor to see them. My neck was so sore with a humdinger of a crick, at least that's what I thought at the time, that I had to take two hands and turn my head to face my guests. Pastor Ryan told me that no health crisis could stop God's plan for my life. That sounded so good that I asked him to say it again. It sounded good the second time, too. I could already see that this crisis would be a detour on life's highway, but, Lord willing, not the end of my journey. There is one thing I've always enjoyed about detours. They allow us to see different scenery and often different people. Just ahead, I will spend quality time with some wonderful people, some old acquaintances, and some new. Notes. Probably this concern for the destiny of my contemporaries was birthed partially by a song I heard years ago as a teen. A man and his daughter sang the haunting words in beautiful harmony. One verse reads, "When in the better land before the bar we stand, how deeply grieved our souls may be. If any lost one there should cry in deep despair, you never mentioned him to me. You met me day by day and knew I was astray, yet never mentioned him to me. You never mentioned him to me." By James Lowe.